The Nissan Patrol is going out with a bang with this current generation model, and it's an Australian only special. This is the Nissan Patrol Warrior. It's got a bunch of upgrades for off-road usage, new wheels and tires. It's got a mad exhaust on it. Still got a V8, of course. And in this video, I want to see how good this thing is actually off-road. We've got some hard tracks to tackle today. Hopefully I don't do any damage, but I do want to see what this Patrol is made of. Let's get stuck into it. 2024 Nissan Patrol Warrior is priced from $101,160 before on-road costs, and that makes it $16,000 more expensive than the Patrol TI on which it's based. This means the Patrol Warrior misses out on things like heated and vented seats up front, a cooled center console, electric tailgate, and rear entertainment seat, amongst other things that the TIL gets. But the Warrior focuses mostly on suspension and chassis upgrades. There's new springs front and rear, retuned dampers, and adjustments to the hydraulic body motion control system. This is joined by 34.5-inch Yokohama all-terrain tyres, which are some of the largest you'll get on a standard vehicle anywhere in Australia, and you get a total increase of 50 mils in ride height and ground clearance. There's a 120 kilo GVM upgrade, which helps to account for the 72 kilo increase in curb weight, and that makes for a 48 kilo bump in payload overall. There's a red bash plate up front and an upgraded exhaust system, which has two AMG-style side exit pipes on top of the regular rear exit. So while this Patrol can still sound relatively docile at times, it can also burst into a loud, angry and aggressive bark that, if you love V8s, is deeply satisfying. Under the bonnet is the same 5.6 litre petrol V8, which uses no electric assistance or forced induction, to make 298 kilowatts and 560 newton meters. This runs through a 7-speed automatic gearbox and clutch-based all-wheel drive system with a low-range transfer case. The rear diff is both helically limited slip and a locking unit, and there's also independent suspension at all four corners. Don't expect great fuel economy from this 2.8-ton V8 powered beast. Against a claim of 14.4 litres per 100 on the combined cycle, we averaged around 20 litres per 100. Which included town driving, highway driving, and a full day of off-road. So the first thing to talk about with this Patrol Warrior is that it's actually based on the TI model, not the TIL. So you don't get things like a cooled center console inside and rear entertainment seats. But for off-road, it's a better thing because we've got a better bumper here on the front in terms of clearance. The TIL one sits down a lot lower, but this one's got a little bit better clearance so you can approach big rocks and that sort of thing. Always good news for off-road. You'll see a nice big red Warrior bash plate under there. Looks pretty tough, but it does add some extra protection. There is a tow hook as well, which looks reasonably sturdy, I suppose. And then, just following along here, you'll see this bit of cladding that the Premcar, the guys who have actually engineered this Patrol Warrior, have added just so it matches up nicely with some flares on here. So the Patrol is a really big vehicle already, but this thing takes it to the next level. It's wider and it's taller. A lot of that height actually comes from these tyres. These are Yokohama Geolander all-terrain tyres. They're on a different wheel and they're massive. These are some of the biggest tyres you will get on a factory four-wheel drive off the showroom floor. They're around 34.5 inches or something like that. They're not a full-on 35, but bloody hell, they're pretty close and they are massive. They give you lots of clearance off-road. The other thing to talk about, which is a little bit tricky to see at the moment, is the suspension. So this Patrol, as always, it's independent front, independent rear suspension, and it's got a setup that doesn't use sway bars. It uses a hydraulic system. They call it hydraulic body motion control. It's a tricky system to modify because it's one big high pressure system that if you crack it and open it, you lose your pressure and the system is redundant. But Premcar has figured out how to do it. So this has been revalved through the shock absorbers, and that system has all been reworked along with some new coil springs all round for a lift, some softer damping, and a bit more of a focus on off-road ability. And we'll see how it goes today in terms of how it travels, but it's definitely bigger and taller, right? Moving along here across the side, we've got some decals there. V8 Warrior, of course, you have to let everyone know that you've spent the big dollars on the big dog in the Patrol range here. And one detail that a lot of people will love. No, it's not a G-Class, it's not an AMG, but it does have those rectangular shaped side exit exhausts. Sounds fantastic too. There's actually, the standard exhaust system is still here. So you've got the regular old pipe out at the back there, but now it's bimodal. So there's a valve in there, and if you mash that accelerator pedal or you stick it into manual mode, the exhaust sound comes out of here. Wind down your window as well because it does sound glorious. At the back of the Patrol Warrior, there isn't maybe as much going on, but there are some things to talk about. Firstly, the Warrior badging on the back there. You've got that interesting text. I reckon it looks pretty cool, actually. The tow bar is smartly designed, and you do actually have room for a full-size spare, and it is a Yokohama tyre under there. So you could do a 5-tyre rotation on this car. It's a proper spare wheel. That is really important. One thing you can't see as well with this car is that it has had a GVM upgrade. It's only 120 kilograms, and it does account for, I suppose, the extra weight of this car as it is standard. Adding big wheels and tyres, especially all-terrain tyres with a light truck construction, that does add a lot of weight to a vehicle with some protection as well, but the GVM upgrade covers that. You've actually got around 90 kilos of extra payload now with this Patrol Warrior, which is handy if you're going to load it up, especially if you're going to do some towing and that sort of thing. You do have a tow bar here. And finally, you've got 2 big recovery points on the back here, nice and sturdy. And that's where you want them, right? Because of course, you're not going to be getting bogged in this thing. You're going to be using these to pull out all your mates. First thing to talk about with this Patrol in an off-road point of view is just the size of the car. It's a big rig. A regular Patrol is big, but this thing, it's taller. It's on taller tyres. It's got the suspension lift, and you can really feel it from behind the wheel. So you need to get used to it, I think, is the way to look at it. Because if you're coming from like a Prado or even like an 80 series LandCruiser, this is going to feel like a big rig off-road. So tight tracks are definitely not its strength. But I've been doing some rock crawling here. I've been putting it through some pretty hard ruts, and man, this thing does have a lot of stability and grip, especially when you consider that there isn't a live axle in sight here. Gives you a lot of ground clearance as well. Traction control is tuned pretty well. Hear it nibbling away there at the front. When you consider how much tyre you've got, good grippy tyre, you can air them right down like I've done today. I'm around 20 PSI all round. I could go a little bit lower perhaps, but this thing feels confident and grippy, and you've just got mountains of traction underneath. So crawling up, nice and slow and easy. This is a really, really capable four-wheel drive. Absolutely. I'd say this is definitely a more capable off-roader than a LandCruiser, and I'd say it is better than a GR Sport LandCruiser as well. It's significantly cheaper. Gearing isn't massively low, and you'll feel that when you're going downhill mostly. It doesn't give you a stack of reduction and compression braking, so you do need to use the hill descent control. That's not actually that good either, so be prepared to use your brakes where you can. Let's talk about some specs on this Patrol Warrior and where it really has an advantage over a regular Patrol and other four-wheel drives in the segment. The 50 mils of extra ground clearance gives this Patrol a relatively massive claimed ground clearance of 323 millimeters, which is a huge number, and in reality it is quite impressive, and it's significantly more than what you'd get with a 300 series LandCruiser. This is particularly evident at the back because a LandCruiser has a low hanging live axle at the back. The Patrol does not. The only vehicle that's really similar to the Patrol in terms of overall off-road ground clearance would be the Land Rover Defender, which has smaller diameter tyres but also gets height adjustable independent air suspension. It claims 290 mils of off-road clearance in its highest setting. And while this Patrol did prove to be no doubt one of the most capable standard four-wheel drives that money can buy, some of the enjoyment in driving this off-road is robbed by the sheer size of the vehicle. And on some of the regular tracks that we like to drive, we did have to really pay attention. Not to ground clearance, there's plenty of that, but the width of the vehicle and potentially scratching the sides as we snuck through. A 40-degree approach angle of the Patrol is very impressive, but the 23.3-degree departure angle is hamstrung by the larger rear overhang of this 8-seat four-wheel drive. There's 40 mils of extra wheel track in the Patrol Warrior, thanks to those wheels and tyres, and the increased ride height means the Patrol Warrior is also 50 mils taller than a regular Patrol. It's now 1,990 mils, just shy of 2 meters. The Hydraulic Body Motion Control System, or HBMC, means the Patrol goes without traditional sway bars, but body roll is instead controlled by a hydraulic system that connects the forward dampers, and it's a bit of an interlinked system. The benefits for clearance with no live axles is obvious here, but the level of articulation and stability that you get from the Patrol is quite impressive. Whoa man, look how steep this rock step is we're about to take on. Whoa dude. Just kidding, it's actually, in real life, it is pretty steep. Always watch for the trees in the background. That's the trick to see if they're bunging it on the camera. But anyway, we're gonna try and take this Patrol up this step. It's bloody steep actually. We might have to go around here. We'll see how it goes. But if you do like this content, you do like to see four-wheel drives go off-road, give us the thumbs up. Broke my thumb the other day, but it's going all right. Please let me know in the comments as well if you're enjoying this content, because it means we get to go out and do more of it in the future. So get on that keyboard and let me know. Now I'm coming up to a bit of a challenge here. This gearing doesn't feel too bad when you're going forward because the engine's so lazy and torquey. The throttle is pretty relaxed as well. You can just mosey up to some big rock steps like these, ease your way into things. Chances are you've got enough clearance to take them on as well, because this thing is so good for clearance. Now I'm going to turn on my locking diff because I don't want to get out of shape on these rocks. Turn that on. Now let's see how slowly I can crawl up here now. Definitely feel the size of the vehicle and the weight as well. This is a big car, so probably the biggest disadvantage of the Patrol is just how big and heavy it is. But I've got to say, once you get your bearings, this thing feels super duper capable. Now I've got a really big rock step in front of me here. Don't know how this is going to go, to be honest with you. Being such a big vehicle with a big wheelbase also means the turning circle isn't fantastic. This certainly isn't the most maneuverable off-roader I've driven. If you're coming from a Jimny or a short wheelbase Wrangler, you'll get a rude shock in this thing. Let's see how we go here. Perhaps taking on this challenge head on isn't fair for the Patrol because it was hampered a little bit by the long wheelbase, reduced departure angle, and the location of the side exhausts in terms of ground clearance. We made a couple of attempts to get up here, but had to readjust our approach as we bottomed out at the rear a little bit and also on the exhaust. And as you can see, the turning circle of the Patrol Warrior does mean you require a little bit of patience in tight situations like this. But let's give credit where credit's due, because a LandCruiser 300 series, not even a GR Sport, would come close to clearing these rock steps and climbs like the Patrol did. Well, we did make it up there eventually. We had to really maneuver this car around a little bit to get it around the sharp edges there. This thing was starting to bottom out. We did have some clearance issues because of the big wheelbase. For reference, we did get a short wheelbase Wrangler Rubicon up a tougher part of this challenge. Certainly not the toughest part. That's a bit crazy on the other end, but this did do pretty well. Don't forget, this is an 8-seat large four-wheel drive. It's an absolute monster. So maybe it's out of its comfort zone a little bit doing stuff like this, but once we had enough clearance, plenty of grip, absolutely, and the underbody clearance is no problem at all. So we did manage to get it up there around the edge, but I say not too bad for the big Patrol Warrior. I've always had a big soft spot for the big Nissan Patrol over the years, but this Warrior Triton has taken it to another level, I think. It's worth more money these days, but for me, this is definitely the model to buy or look at. The upgrades are quality. They make this vehicle a better off-roader, and it's still got a huge amount of space and that awesome V8 under the bonnet, which thankfully you can now hear even better. It sounds awesome and it goes quite well. If you're looking for something that can do some really fun rock crawling, maybe this isn't the vehicle for you, because at the end of the day, it's huge and it's pretty heavy, but it's still very capable, I think, as we've shown today. And on things like sand and mud, this thing would be an absolute weapon. You can fit 8 inside, you get a few looks driving around town, and I think this is just a really enjoyable car. If I had to choose between this and a LandCruiser GR Sport, I'd be taking this every day and pocketing a fair amount of change in the process. This is a great vehicle. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Would you prefer one of these in your driveway or a LandCruiser, maybe a GXL at the same sort of money? I reckon this is the way to go, but if you think I'm wrong, get on those keyboards and start typing. And as always, thanks for watching, and see the full review of the Patrol Warrior at Drive.com.au.